Due to decreasing demand, rising operational costs, and geopolitical tensions, many international airlines have decided to cancel or reduce flights to China. Chinese airlines have also started to cut back on international routes. On October 11th, LOT Polish Airlines announced that it would suspend direct flights between Warsaw and Beijing during the 2024-2025 winter season. Krzysztof Mozolski, a spokesperson for LOT Polish Airlines, explained that the sales for the route have been weak, and the flight offers are less competitive compared to airlines operating shorter routes. Previously, LOT's Warsaw-Beijing route was suspended due to the pandemic, but resumed in December last year. Direct flights ran every Wednesday from Warsaw Chopin Airport, arriving in Beijing Capital International Airport on Thursday, with the return flight on Friday. LOT Polish Airlines is the fifth European airline to suspend routes to China recently. The last LOT flight to Beijing was scheduled to depart on October 25th. Earlier, on October 9th, Scandinavian Airlines, SAS, announced that it would stop operating its Copenhagen to Shanghai route starting November 10th. SAS stated that this difficult decision was made due to current market conditions to better allocate resources. However, China remains an important market for SAS, and the company will continue to monitor the situation to see if there are opportunities to resume the route in the future. After cutting routes to Hong Kong and Beijing, this marks SAS' exit from mainland China's market. Affected passengers have been offered three solutions: accept an alternative flight, change flights for free, or receive a full refund. Scandinavian Airlines is the national carrier for Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, owned by the SAS Group. Its headquarters are in Sweden. According to its website, the last Shanghai to Copenhagen flight will operate on November 5th. SAS was popular among European students due to its affordable youth tickets, making it a preferred choice for students returning home. However, many travelers have found that their SAS tickets booked for November have been canceled, leaving them to either rebook or request refunds. The general industry consensus is that airlines from North America and Europe are unable to fly over Russian airspace, which has significantly increased flight times and operating costs for many Asian destinations. Shutting down profitable routes and reallocating resources to more profitable ones has become inevitable. In the past 3 months, 3 other European airlines have also stopped or reduced their flights to China, citing cost and competition pressures. In late September, Lufthansa, one of Europe's largest airlines, announced that it would stop operating flights from Frankfurt to Beijing in late October. A Lufthansa spokesperson in Frankfurt stated that the company decided to suspend the route from October 27th for economic reasons. However, Lufthansa will continue to operate daily flights from its second hub in Munich directly to Beijing. This route will use the Airbus A350, a more modern and fuel-efficient aircraft, while the Frankfurt route had been using the older Airbus A340. In early August, British Airways announced it would suspend its London to Beijing route in late October. This suspension is expected to last at least a year, with a review planned for November 2025. Meanwhile, the airline will continue to operate flights to Shanghai. In mid-July, Virgin Atlantic Airways announced that it would suspend its only route to China, the London-Shanghai flight, starting October 26th. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, Western airlines placed great importance on the Chinese market, aiming to benefit from affluent Chinese travelers. However, during the pandemic, the number of flights dropped sharply. Although airlines began adjusting their schedules after China reopened its borders in 2023, travel demand has struggled to return to pre-pandemic levels. Additionally, since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, European airlines have been banned from entering Russian airspace, forcing them to take longer routes to China, which raises operating costs. Meanwhile, Chinese airlines can still use Russian airspace, giving them a cost advantage. Apart from Europe, several airlines in the Asia-Pacific region have also adjusted their routes to China. On September 10th, AirAsia Philippines announced that it would halt all flights this year from Manila to mainland China due to low demand, shifting its focus instead to the Japanese market. On October 3rd, the Philippines Department of Tourism released a statement urging local airlines to reassess routes between the Philippines and China. The overall weak demand for international travel from China, combined with the slowing Chinese economy and ongoing geopolitical tensions between the two countries, has further contributed to this trend. Philippines AirAsia has already suspended all flights from Manila to China. In 2019, flights to China accounted for 30% of the airline's total passenger volume, covering about 7 cities. By 2023, that number had dropped to 4 cities, and by mid-year, only 2 remained. By the end of August, there were no flights to China left. Earlier, Royal Brunei Airlines announced in mid-July that it would suspend flights to and from Beijing starting October 27th. The airline said it would continue to monitor the market situation and resume flights once conditions improve. Meanwhile, Qantas Airways announced in mid-May that it would suspend flights from Sydney to Shanghai starting July 28th due to low market demand, with plans to revisit the route once the situation improves. Notably, while Australian Airlines halted routes to China, they opened new routes to Manila and increased flights to Singapore. In the 3 major airlines, United, Delta, and American Airlines are also cutting back on flights to China. Delta Airlines, which initially planned to resume its Los Angeles-Shanghai round-trip route this fall, announced the cancellation of those plans. Some airlines, while not canceling flights to China, have switched from using larger aircraft to smaller ones. For example, Emirates has stopped using the larger Airbus A380 on its smaller routes to China and switched to the smaller Boeing 777. Why are so many airlines suspending flights to China? The core reason is declining demand. Operating international flights has become less profitable. Analysts suggest that these changes indicate a noticeable decline in China's global influence. David Huang, a Chinese-American economist, said that these decisions by airlines are not short-term moves, but a part of a long-term strategy. By withdrawing certain routes, they signal a lack of confidence in the near, medium, and long-term prospects of the Chinese market. Huang further explained that in the past, China's booming economy made it a major consumer market that attracted significant international interest. What used to be highly sought-after routes for airlines have now become routes to avoid. This reflects the weakening of China's investment and tourism markets and indicates severe downward pressure on the domestic economy. Recently, a commentary from Radio Free Asia noted that 5 years ago, China was one of the world's most popular travel destinations. Business travelers frequently commuted, and international tourists visited in droves, showing the global interest in China and its significant international influence. However, after the COVID-19 pandemic broke out, flights were widely suspended, almost as if someone pulled the plug. Although flights gradually resumed after the pandemic ended, the number of flights to China has seen a sharp decline over the years. As of June this year, global international passenger traffic reached 5.35 million, a 112% increase compared to the same period last year. Yet, routes to China remain noticeably sparse. In July, flights between the US and China operated at only 24% of the frequency seen in July 2019, with seat occupancy at just a quarter of what it was 5 years ago. Rough estimates suggest that, assuming pre-pandemic flights between the US and China were nearly full, monthly passenger numbers have dropped by 93.7% compared to pre-pandemic levels, leaving just 6.3% of the previous volume. Among these travelers, many are Chinese Americans visiting family in China. This summer, very few of the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students in the U.S. returned to China, mainly because they feared issues with renewing their student visa upon their return to the U.S. The article emphasized that flights from the U.S. to China are the most telling factor among global routes to China, as the U.S. is a primary destination for Chinese travelers. China relies on the U.S. market for foreign exchange through exports, and it seeks technology, often acquiring it from the U.S. When flights between the U.S. and China see fewer passengers, it suggests that U.S.-China relations are nearing a freezing point. Although China has a population of 1.4 billion compared to Taiwan's 23.5 million, there are now twice as many flights from the U.S. to Taiwan than to China. Last December, there were 143 weekly passenger flights between Taiwan and North America, while China had only 70. In April this year, U.S. airlines collectively wrote to the U.S. Department of Transportation, requesting a halt to increasing flights between the U.S. and China. This shift by U.S. airlines reflects a clear message from business travelers and tourists. They no longer wish to visit China. Moreover, in July this year, international flights departing from China were down by 23% compared to the same period in 2019, and the number of foreign tourists visiting China was only 30% of pre-pandemic levels. Professor Sun Guoxiang of Nanhua University in Taiwan explained that the airline industry serves as vital infrastructure for international business, tourism, and cultural exchange. The reduction in international flights could negatively impact China's international trade, foreign investment, and business activities. China's outbound tourism sector could also be hit, further impacting the country's economic development. Sun also pointed out that China's global appeal has been waning, especially after the pandemic, with many countries accelerating the process of decoupling from China. The suspension of flights to China by several countries reflects a shift in the business world's assessment of China's global significance. Prominent economist Cheng Xiaoneng noted that the reduction in flights is not just about fewer travelers heading to China. China's outbound travel has also seen a sharp decline. The drop in the number of Chinese taking international flights can be attributed to financial constraints, as many simply don't have the funds. Additionally, strict control over passports has prevented many middle-class workers from sectors like education, healthcare, and media from traveling abroad. To compete for limited passengers, Chinese airlines have been offering discounts on tickets, resulting in a combined loss of 7 billion yuan for the country's 4 major state-owned airlines in the first half of the year. Despite this, Chinese airlines are hesitant to cancel international routes because applying for these routes requires a reciprocal agreement with foreign airlines. If they cancel a route, they risk losing it permanently. While several countries adjust their routes to China, the Chinese airline industry is undergoing a period of restructuring. With the Chinese government requiring some cities to cancel subsidies for international routes, a significant reduction in flights is expected. In late August, China's Civil Aviation Administration and the National Development and Reform Commission jointly issued guidelines on building international aviation hubs, categorizing the development into a 3+7 framework. The first category, 3, includes Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou, designated as comprehensive gateways for international air travel. The second category, 7, covers Chengdu, Shenzhen, Chongqing, Kunming, Xi'an, Urumqi, and Harbin, identified as regional gateways. The third category, N, refers to several regional hubs across the country. The guidelines specify that local governments should not provide subsidies for international routes connecting to airports outside the 3+7 cities. This means that cities beyond these 10 hubs will no longer receive subsidies for international flights. Reports indicate that many cities in China are facing declining occupancy rates on international flights, with routes struggling to fill seats. For instance, the Nanjing-Sydney route has an average seat occupancy rate of around 50%, even during its best year, which was 2020, when it peaked at 60%. Industry experts estimate that for China's aviation sector to be profitable, the minimum occupancy rate should be 60%. Besides Nanjing, flights from cities like Qingdao, Wuhan, and Hangzhou to Sydney had occupancy rates below 50% in March, with Jinan-Sydney routes dropping to as low as 26.8%. These routes have been dubbed flying empty seats. Given the lack of demand, why do many cities continue to operate international routes, even resorting to subsidies? As of September 6, aside from Hong Kong, Macau, and the 10 hub cities, China still maintains 280 international routes connecting 48 cities. In August, the Civil Aviation Administration approved 307 applications for international routes from non-primary cities, including routes like Hangzhou to Seoul, Wuxi to Tokyo, and Ordos to Jeju. Many of these international routes were established during the aviation boom before the pandemic. The goal was to enhance the city's international profiles and boost their global presence. As one airport spokesperson mentioned, for a secondary city to have direct flights to Europe or the US brings positive publicity and helps attract foreign investment. Data from the Asia-Pacific Aviation Research Center, CAPA, shows that from 2007 to 2013, Chinese airlines launched 24 intercontinental routes, but between 2014 and 2018, this number increased to 78, more than doubling in 5 years. With so many international routes, how are they sustained amid low demand? The answer lies in local subsidies. Partial statistics indicate that in 2016 and 2017, the Chinese government and the Civil Aviation Administration spent over 10 billion yuan on subsidies for these routes. Under these circumstances, there is growing speculation that many cities' international flights are at risk of being cancelled. Furthermore, China's 4 major airlines are facing significant losses. According to Yi Cai, among the 4 Chinese airlines, China Eastern Airlines is expected to narrow its net loss by 3.3 billion to 3.8 billion yuan in the first half of the year. Following this, Air China anticipates a net loss of around 2.3 billion to 3 billion yuan, while China Southern Airlines and Hainan Airlines reported losses between 820 million and 1.58 billion yuan. China Eastern Airlines cited several reasons for the heavy losses in the first half of the year. These include restrictions on local flight rights, inadequate airport resources in markets such as North America and Japan, and increased competition within the domestic passenger market. Additionally, the high cost of jet fuel has impacted profitability. Former legal advisor to the Inner Mongolian government, Du Wen, stated that the 3-year pandemic nearly crippled the aviation industry, and the losses seen by airlines are not just a short-term issue, but the result of long-standing challenges. This year, airlines face multiple difficulties. First, the surge in international oil prices during the first half of the year significantly increased costs. Secondly, currency fluctuations have had an impact. Since fuel charges and overseas airport fees are priced in US dollars, the depreciation of the yuan has led to higher costs for international operations. Moreover, the recovery post-pandemic has been slow, without the expected surge in demand. The 4 major airlines continue to struggle, engaging in fierce price wars instead of cooperation, further eroding profits. Du Wen also pointed out that recent years have seen a rise in nationalism and anti-foreign sentiment in China, deterring many foreign investors. He explained, the deteriorating political environment in China makes it feel unsafe for foreigners, reducing international exchanges. Moreover, strict controls on government employees' overseas travel, with passports being confiscated, have led to a sharp decline in passengers. Airlines are expanding their fleets, but the number of passengers is plummeting, so it's no surprise that they're losing money. Losses are just one aspect. The next step may well be restructuring, consolidation, or even bankruptcy.